All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Lockdown Learning. I'm extremely excited for our special guest today. Our special guest today is Gary Polson, who some of you may know. Brief bio on Gary. Gary is the chairman and CEO of Sidcor out in California. He lives in LA area. He works up in LA area. Gary's got more than 25 years of experience in business operations, including accounting, legal, and senior management. Prior to joining Sidcor in 2000, so 20 years ago, he served as CEO of TO Printing, a commercial printing and direct mail business. He also practiced as a corporate attorney, specializing in commercial transactions. And prior to that, he was a staff accountant at Price Waterhouse. So this is somebody who's got his accounting degree, he's got his law degree from Berkeley, and is one of the smartest people I know. And I had the opportunity to meet Gary for the first time in 2002. When I was an entry level, an account manager at a direct sales office in Atlanta, Georgia. And then as I opened up my own office, Gary has been a mentor to me and a friend and somebody I've really looked up to over the past close to 18 years. And when I first got into doing direct sales and into the idea of building a business, I wasn't exactly sure what I wanted to do. But when I met Gary, I had the feeling that if Gary Polson was part of this thing, I wanted to be a part of it too, because he had a lot of what I was looking to build in my life. He had a great family. He was married with 3 kids. I remember meeting his youngest when she was only about, I think maybe 6 years old. And she just graduated college. So it's pretty cool to see that. And although Gary and I are not related, even though the rumors do say that we are, we just both happen to be both. So Gary, I appreciate you making the time to be on today. How are you?
I'm doing good. And Adam, I wish I was young enough only to have 25 years of experience. So I'm flattered that you think I'm that young.
I guess I'm reading off your bio page. We got to update the bio there.
Probably. Right? It's 40 years now.
40 years of experience. There we go. Or maybe it was before you joined, you were at the 20-year mark.
I don't know.
But whatever the case, he's been in the business world, killing it for a long time. So Gary, for today, I'd love to ask you a few questions. I got some things lined up that I would love to hear about, and I've heard some of the stories, and I want you to share them. We're live on our YouTube channel today, and then for anybody who has questions, about halfway through, we'll open it up for questions. As usual, what'll happen is you'll type the question in the chat box. I'll read through them. I'll pick a few people to ask you questions, and I'll unmute those people. So, Gary, I know you come from a family of really tenacious, really hardworking people, and you had some great examples growing up. So I'd love for you, if you could share really a little bit about your childhood, the way you were raised, your upbringing, and the lessons you learned about hard work, really from early on and through your teenage years, because I've heard a couple of these stories, and one of them really stands out for me, and I think you know the one I'm talking about. If not, I'll clue you back in, but it involves ice cream. So there we go. And if you could give us a few minutes just explaining that, I would love to hear kind of how everything got started for you.
Yeah, well, thank you, Adam. And it's great being on. Hello, everyone. I feel like I'm one of those people that fortunately won the genetic lottery, meaning that I grew up, happened to be raised with a really nice family. My parents were, have a great marriage, and they were just great role models. And, not everyone has that. And I didn't have, I grew up nicely. And so I had a lot of advantages, and the biggest, part of it was my dad, who was, he had his ups and downs early in his career. And so he kind of got a late start again with a new career when he was about 34 or so years old, when he went out and started doing, actually for a real estate company at a housing tract, doing sales, and it was commission based. And obviously, real estate, some years are really good. And then all of a sudden, if mortgage rates get too high or something, or the economy bad, it's like grinds to a halt. And so it was a bit up and down. The interesting thing is my dad was pretty even keeled about it. He worked really hard, and he just worked his way up. It was a big company. The owner of the company actually owned the Portland Trail Blazers. So it's a successful company, and he worked his way up. And then when I was 13, he got a big promotion, and we moved in a really nice, upper middle class neighborhood. I got my own bedroom. We had a swimming pool. It was like the Beverly Hillbillies. And what I noticed is that even though he had his downs early on, he just stuck at it. he just kept at it. And he pretty much worked every weekend. So I was about 14. It's really hardworking, but he always put the family, always felt like a priority, even though he worked a lot of hours. We didn't see him a lot. And as a kid, when you can imagine your dad working every weekend, you don't get to see him because you're in school most of the week. I missed him a lot. But he was a great example. And his focus on me was always character and integrity. That was in doing my chores and all that. Although, a lot of times he said I was kind of lazy. If I don't get good at my chores, I'll amount to nothing. But one of the things that, and to Adam alluded to, there's like two, so just seeing his example, at the end of the day, it's monkey see, monkey do. And my dad was a really good monkey. And I'm hoping I'm a good one for my kids too. This is our example that teaches the most. But I remember two kind of things as I'm formulating as a teenager that really hit me hard. One of them, 16 or 17, working at 31 Flavors Baskin Robbins ice cream. And I remember I took a lot of pride in what I did. I thought I did a good job. And I remember I came home one day at night, and I worked till about 9:30, and I'd get home on school nights around that time. And my parents were usually in bed. My dad had to get up early. But I remember one time coming home, and my parents were at the door. And I'm like, is everything okay? It just startled me. It was my grandparents okay? Like, I didn't know why. It just startled me. And I go, is everything okay? And they go, no. I go, what's going on? They said, I can't believe what you did today. So I was a good student. I wait, did Taft called? That was the name of my high school. Did my high school call? Like, I thought originally it was just had to be school or something. Didn't make sense. They go, not school, work. I go, work? I go to Mr. Brock. He was the owner of the franchise of 31 Flavors. Did Mr. Brock call? And he goes, no, we saw it for ourselves. And I go, wait, were you spying on me at work? I go, no, we went to go visit you and get some ice cream. And there was a line out the door, and then wait a minute, why would you come visit me? You see me every day at home. I was like, no, there's a line out the door, and we didn't come, and it was you and your, colleague at work. And I mean, it was, and then all of a sudden some cute girl comes in with her dog. You let the dog in the place, which they're not allowed to be. And then you go over around the counter to sit with her, try to pick up on her like for 15 minutes, petting the dog with ice cream on your, I go, what the hell was that? And I go, oh, I was taking my break. And my dad goes, break? What do you mean break? I go, Dad, California. My dad's Canadian. I go, in California, every 4 hours, you get a 20-minute break.
Love it. You think that the question is because you actually have to explain to your father what a break is, right?
Yeah, right.
You got to explain the law to your dad.
Yeah, and so I go, I get a 20-minute break. And he goes, when there's customers in line, there is no break. If this was your grandfather's company, would you be taking a break when there's customers in line? When there's customers or client, you jump. Like, you have an honor to be able to service them. And so anyway, as he hit me, I'm like, think I'm just serving ice cream, but it did hit me. He also said something else. He said, look, if you're going to amount to anything, you got to treat that business like it's your family business, your own business. You don't treat it like you're working for some big corporation. Treat it like your own. Then you'll be the owner one day. So again, I was 16, 17. I was just thinking, I was just trying to make some money to, pay for my gas and stuff. But it was a great lesson that I learned. It was like a huge lesson about, wowing clients, and also about, if I want to be an owner of something, I got to act like it today. Treat everything like it's the family business. So those were some things, Adam.
So Gary, when did you know that you wanted to be an entrepreneur? When was your moment for you that was like, I want to work for me?
Well, it kind of came in bits and spots, and as my confidence increased. The first thing, I was visiting my friend's fathers, Maury Lewitt, my friend Brian's father, Maury. Maury had a really incredible house. The thing about Maury that was really impressive, I moved in this new neighborhood. I had never been to the Fabulous Forum for a Laker game, and Maury had season tickets. And I was thinking, whoa. We went to his house, and he had a library floor to ceiling with a ladder that you could go up on books. Well, I love books more than anything at that time. And I'm thinking, wow, that would be cool. They also had like an ice cream sundae part near their bar. And I'm like, whoa. And this house was incredible. I go, what does your dad do? I didn't even know. I was probably 14. I didn't really understand how work worked exactly. But he said, yeah, my dad, owns his own business. He builds hospitals. I go, own your own business, huh? My grandfather had his own business too up in Winnipeg. I started it was the first time it said, if I want Laker seats, if I want those, maybe. So I was 14. It was kind of in my head a little bit, but it was just too outlandish at the time. As I was in college, it started coming in my head. Like probably my sophomore, junior year, I was thinking that's what I'm going to do. I was in the Berkeley Business School as an undergraduate, and I'm learning. I'm just saying I'm going to be in my own business. I'm going to be in my own business, and that's when I started my first business at 23.
So your first business you started at 23, what was it and how did it go?
Okay, so we were, it was some friends. It was really fun. It was called Financial Careers Agency, and we were recruiters for accountants. And we take accountants from the big public companies like Price Waterhouse and, Ernst & Young and so forth. And we put them into industry like Disney or Carnation or companies like that. It was a ton of fun. Kind of, it was a fun, we're all young. I hired a bunch of buddies of mine from high school and college. And it was basically a lot of sales, cold calling. And I learned sales. The first year and a half, it went unbelievable. I was so scared. I was so excited. I put everything in. I knew nothing, but I put everything in and we did great. And I did very well financially for that time. And then I started getting a little, I don't know, cocky was the word or whatever. And I said, I don't need to work this hard. And I stopped putting my foot on the gas pedal so much, less. And the next thing I know, I lost my business because I had really bad work habits. I was really immature. And also we had team nights. And at the time, just spent way too much money on them. And that was a big problem too, because I started running out of money and we had epic team nights, like ridiculous. We tried to show off to everyone with our money and buying everyone drinks, even if they weren't even on part of the company, and part of it was trying to meet girls and stuff.
But part of it too is it was a different time. I mean, that was the culture at that time. It was, you flash the cash if you got it, right?
Probably more so. It was kind of getting that way. But I was just young and immature, and I thought it was easy. I could just make more money easy. I didn't realize how hard it was. It went crashing down, and I learned some, tough lessons with that. And I lost my confidence for a while. I thought maybe I don't have it. I don't have what it takes.
And then from there you went and you got your law degree at Berkeley, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so how did you go from running a recruiting business, being an accountant, to getting to your law degree, and then you ended up opening a printing company? Tell us the story of how that went.
So I really didn't want to go to law school. I just didn't. I was broke. I owed people money, and I didn't know another business to get into. And I was like devastated. I was emotionally just crushed, and my confidence was down. So Susan's mom, my wife's mom, Susan's mom was a lawyer, and she was like in a stage where there weren't a lot of women lawyers, and she thought I should go to law school. And I was thinking, I really don't want to do that because I was done with school. I was a good student, but I didn't want any more school. And it had been 3 years. I have to take the LSAT. I did lousy on the SAT. So I'm figuring, at least for as good my grades were, I'm thinking, oh, this isn't going to go well. And if I didn't do well on the LSAT, I couldn't go to a public school where it was free. And I was not that in, but I said, you know what, if I could get in, I could just recharge, play intramural sports again, and then figure out another business to do when I, could get my head together. And maybe if I could get into a really good law school where they give me a scholarship or whatever, I'd just do it. So then I just, that's what was my approach. And I really didn't want to be a lawyer at all. I don't like details, that much. I'll do it if I have to. And sometimes I do, but I'm more of a people person. I love building things. That was my passion. But I couldn't figure out another business for a couple of years. So I was a lawyer for about 2.5 years and then figured out about the commercial printing business.
What led you to commercial printing?
It wasn't commercial printing. I wanted to get into manufacturing.
Okay.
I didn't care what it was. I was looking for an old guy who couldn't sell. Most people, what happens, they have a business and then they get to a certain age and they don't want to run it anymore, but there's really no one to buy it, And so I thought I could take the business over and pay him over 5 years time. And that was kind of my approach. I went to manufacturing because I was at that stage, very impulsive. And I just was so inconsistent. And I was really nervous, in reality, that how can I stay married if I'm so inconsistent in everything? I just didn't trust myself. And I was talking to this guy, Maury, I mentioned before, and asked him about it. And he said, well, maybe you get into something like manufacturing where every day you got to grind it out. There's no home runs. Like you like hitting home runs. Grind it out every day. And then you'll have that discipline and consistency. So it hit me like, that's true. Because when I was studying the wealthy people in LA, now I was so, I guess, overly confident at the time. I thought I would do well. So I was just studying men that were like 60 years old, 70, and trying to see who had the great family life. Because I wanted to do well in business and have a great family life. But I noticed a lot of the big shots had horrible family lives. They had like 3 marriages, marrying with a woman at their daughter's age. The kids hated each other, the steps, like it was so like out there. And they're just like, I didn't want that. And what I observed is that the guys that I admired the most happened to be in manufacturing. Hey, they weren't the flashiest, maybe not even the wealthiest, but they did quite well for themselves and they had great marriages. And when Maury said that, it just clicked. And so that's why I wanted to go in manufacturing.
So it's really interesting because those of us who know you now, you're like this beacon of consistency, great example, dad, granddad, you're an amazing brother, you're a great son. You're like, when I think of like steady Eddie consistency, I think, if you look it up, you're in the dictionary, your picture's right there. So
Yeah.
when we've got a lot of young entrepreneurs on the call, one of the struggles for people as they're beginning to do well, as they're beginning to make money, as they're beginning to feel success for the first time, is they do let off the gas. They do get a little cocky, or something's working for them. It's working, and then they stop doing it and it stops working. So what advice do you have for somebody who keeps going through those ups and downs and hitting those pitfalls? Because you've clearly figured it out.
Well, there's hope. That's the first thing. And if it's whether it's important to you, if it's not important to you, you're probably not going to work on it. To me, was the most important thing, because if I didn't have a great family life, if I didn't have a great marriage and good relations with my kids and my family, and then life wouldn't be worth living for me. That is most important. And I just felt like well, first of all, I was diagnosed as hyperactive. Maybe in these days they'd call you ADHD or ADD or whatever. The school wanted me on Ritalin and stuff. And so I think it's just people like me, it's harder to buckle down. And I was just telling my wife this morning that yesterday I had a hard time buckling down. And to this morning, I was like, oh, I'm in my rhythm. I still struggle with it. So it's a kind of like an ongoing battle every day. I hate to say it. I've worked hard at it and it was important to me. And so I just kind of do it. Now, I cheat a little in that I have to have a really rigid schedule. I have to do the same thing each morning, pretty much, of how I stretch and work out and do my meditation. I got to, do my day planner, my planning of the day exactly the same every day. I have to make myself as systematic as possible. Even my one-on-ones, they're scheduled for the same day. Like if it's Monday at 3, it's Monday at 3 every week. I try not to leave as much to my own discretion, because with my discretion, I'll mess it up. I mean, I hate to say it. And so I just kind of do those things. I learn my tricks. I mean, even as a little boy, where I have to concentrate on something was really hard. for me to sit down too long, I'd reward myself. So if I could study for 10 minutes or 15 minutes, whatever, I first started 10 minutes, I'd reward myself by walking around the house. To right now, if I get a task done that takes me 10, 15, that's really hard to concentrate, or 20, I reward myself by going in the back of the man cave here and maybe doing a putt or doing a chip or doing a stretch or just going outside for a minute or two. So I've learned, and everyone has to learn for themselves, of how to create the focus and all that. But for me, it's been quite a battle.
Okay, excellent. So early, you started your manufacturing business, you got into that. You were still young. You had a young family, right? It was you
Yeah.
and Susan, and your oldest was in diapers, I believe.
Yeah.
Did you have any big eye-opening moments that really pushed you early in your career?
Push me. What do you mean?
Just pushed you to work harder or taught you big lessons, almost any oh shit moments, if you will.
Well, I did, because when and I can't remember exactly when, it was sometime in 1989, but I don't remember exactly when. So Brooke was probably a little less than a year or so, I'm thinking. So, but anyway, I was really, my motivation pumped up. Like, I was playing all in once I had Brooke, my oldest. It was like, okay, game on. I can't mess it up anymore. It's been like 9 years of wandering through the desert like a yo-yo, and I can't do that anymore. That was what I was telling myself. However, that was a bad habit to break. And in reality, I was kind of a quitter at that point. If you look at myself at 30 years old, at that point, I pretty much quit everything I started. And I was starting like, hey, Gary, you can't be a quitter, but kind of that's who you are. So you got to make a stand. So, but I was kind of in the business. I didn't know what to do half the days. It's not like someone trained me how to do it. I didn't know what to do or where to spend my time. And a couple of things happened. One of them is, Armando Torres was our paper vendor. He was like very important to us. He supplied our paper and gave us the credit. And Armando took me to a Dodger game once, and I was like, uh-oh, this isn't going to be good. He's going to cut my credit off. He's such a nice guy and so classy. He'd probably take me to a Dodger game and tell me the bad news. But he told me, hey, look, if you want me to extend credit, you got to go out in the field and do the sales yourself. You got to be the #1 sales guy to the company. And he explained, like, in every small business, the owner's the #1 sales guy. And at that time, he says, you can hire people for $5 an hour. That was like, what people paid back then. To do all that paperwork you're sitting doing, you got to go. No one could do the sales like you can. So that was one lesson. But in that, so a few things happened. That, and I had to do it because Armando said it. He did my paper. My whole lifeline was dependent on him. Second thing, and he was really wise and a great guy. Second thing that happened is, I had a cousin, Danny, who's very successful, and I was struggling in the business, what to do. I just felt like I didn't know the magic formula how to be successful. Danny was really successful. I asked Danny, can you come visit my place and show me what I'm doing wrong? And Danny kind of laughed, and he's like, no, I'm not doing it. I got my own business to run. I'm not spending the day with you. I got my own things. But basically what he did tell me is that whatever issue you have, just work harder. There is no magic formula. Just work harder, as hard as you can. That was basically the message. And so those things were happening. And that was some of the big kind of moments that just said, oh yeah. And Danny was telling me his schedule, which was like crazy every waking hour. I can't do that, I said. He said, well, how much more can you do? But I wasn't even working Saturdays at the time. He says, you got to work every Saturday, at least one Sunday a month if you can't do more than that. This is like, and it just hit me. I go, yeah, I got to do it. I got to do that.
That's really cool. Because as long as I've known you, you've been one of the hardest working people I've known. And during this whole period where we're trying to figure out what to do and how to move forward, I think you've probably worked 100 hours a week, and you're not at the beginning of your career. So it's cool to hear that. What is your favorite thing about what you do now?
I don't know. Work to me got more fun the better I got at it and the less financial pressures I had. So I'm in this, obviously right now with the virus, obviously there's more stress than I've had, but in general, I don't know. I just like everything about it. I love the people I work with. I love going shoulder to shoulder. We have multi-generations of incredibly talented people, and I love it. I have people, my own peers that I love, and people that are almost entry-level people that are incredible, that inspire me every day. And I just like being part of building something shoulder to shoulder. I don't like what's going on right now. No one does. But on the other hand, it's really exciting to how we're going to pull through it and just working with everyone on it. I like all of it. But at the end of the day, it's always about the people. And what I hope is that my example inspires people of just how to be a good person, to be successful, to make your family a priority, how you deal with, the people that you work with the dignity and respect. And I feel lucky to still at my age be valuable and make a contribution. I always worried that, that I don't want to be older and have no value anymore or be the crusty old guy. When I was your age, I didn't want to be that either. I want to keep learning and growing, and I just feel lucky to be able to do that.
On the opposite end of the spectrum, what's your least favorite thing about what you do? What are the things that still get to you even after all this time?
I don't like details. I like if I'm doing something where I feel it's not really contributing in the bigger ways that I want to contribute, but sometimes I'm stuck in it, it drags me down a little bit. I just don't like the details. I have to at times, but I have to do it. But that would be, and there's a lot of details right now with loans and things like that, and I got to do it, and I'm very good at it when I get focused on it, but it starts getting a little boring for me.
I understand that for sure. In terms of balancing, people talk about work-life balance, and people talk about, the importance of having that personal time intermixed with the time with the family, intermixed with the business. What advice do you have for young entrepreneurs, people who are, even whether they have a family or not, but people who are early in their career, in the first 10 years, what advice do you have for people to be able to enjoy as they grow and also continue to put in the work?
Again, I'm going to talk about what Maury Lewitt told me at that time. He was, when I was struggling as in my business, and I would go to Maury, he was a mentor of mine, and I'd go, I don't know if I could do it. I don't know if I have what it takes. Everything's going wrong. I'd be Eeyore all the time. And he'd go, Gary, relax. You're going to do fine. You got the character. You care about your people. You're so committed to it all. You just got to take time to learn. But if you're that anxious all the time, it's going to be a miserable journey. At the end of it, you're going to be very successful and go, why did I spend all that time worrying? And you know what? He was right. That's exactly what happened. I worried too much. But it's hard not to, because you don't know what you're doing. Now, depends on the business you're in. A lot of times people start business like me that I don't have no idea what I'm doing. No one showed me how to do it. Other times people get mentored and groomed, and so they have a little bit of an idea of what they need to do. Like in what we do, people get groomed. So when they're starting their first business, they have a very good idea what to do. So maybe less stress in that way, but it's still stressful. I don't know. My attitude, and it's different today. And so my attitude was like, and you've heard the story, for me I had to do everything I could to make sure I was successful. So I had to sacrifice everything at the beginning, and then later I'll have the things that I need, because if I can't provide for my family, it just won't work. At the beginning, that's all I was thinking about. Like, so just how can I buy a home one day and just get 2 cars, buy 2 cars, and just have a decent life. That's all I wanted at the beginning. I mean, I wanted more, but at the beginning, I was like really worried about even could I do that? So I was like all into the business and go, 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 go. It was different back then for a couple of reasons. One, you didn't have cell phones. You didn't have internet. So if you weren't at the plant, or your office, whatever. If you weren't at the plant, there's like, not, you couldn't do things. So you had to be at the plant all the time. I was in a business that ran 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 3 shifts manufacturing. Like I felt I had to be there all the time. And I just could never catch up because I was doing sales during the day and I had a ton of paperwork at night or, early mornings. I just had to work hard. But, if I look back and with the internet and I could do emails in today's world, if I could go home, have dinner with my family back then go on the internet and go all my paperwork and all those things, wouldn't be that hard to do. Plus, if I need to call the plant, everyone has cell phones and it's easy if I'm driving or whatever, it would have been a lot easier. Now, the problem with that though, is that it's hard to, I would have worried if I was young because I'd be on the internet all the time. Would I ever get asleep? And would I ever, like when I'm with my kids, ever be with them? Because I didn't have the option. It's like I couldn't check my phone. I couldn't check the internet. No one was calling me on my cell phone. So when I was with my kids, I could really be with them. I think that's the challenge of the cell phone, smartphone era that I worry about is I see parents all the time, they're with their kids and they keep checking the phone. And when that's not a genuine encounter. The genuine encounter is ignoring everything. When you're with your kids, you're with your kids. I think that's the biggest challenge of today in a lot of ways. The kids, at least in my opinion, everyone has a different opinion, but I'm really into this book, Your Child's Self-Esteem. It was written in the basically late 60s, early 70s. And Dorothy Corkle Briggs, one of the things and that was my Bible raising kids. She says, it doesn't matter how much time you spend with your kids, that's not important. The only thing is when you do spend it, it's genuine encounter, not focused on anything else. I think that's the challenge as parents. But even in relationships, there used to be a commercial where a guy was on a date and he kept looking at his phone to see the scores on his phone and trying to pretend like he wasn't. Like that hurts relationships. So how we do that is going to be hard, and I think that's the bigger challenge.
So Gary, we're going to open it up. It's about 1:30, halfway through. So we're going to open it up. I've got a question from Jared Nolan. Jared, you're unmuted.
Oh, there we go. All right. Hey, Gary, Jared Nolan from Julie Straight's office. So one thing I've always heard from everybody talking about you is I could have met you for 2 minutes and you build a genuine relationship with everybody you meet. So having such a large organization, how is it that you maintain building relationships with so many different people?
Well, it's kind of hard, Jared, in a sense, as the bigger we've gotten, and it's more of a challenge. I just kind of look at it more at I don't know, just curious, I guess. I want to get to know people. If there's a way I can understand something about them. I don't know. I'm always curious, is this someone that maybe I'm meeting for the first time that is newer in the business? Is this someone I'm going to be like 20 years shoulder to shoulder with one day? You never know who that person's going to be. Like, Adam, how long were you in the business before we met?
Probably just a month and a half the first time, I think.
Yeah.
2 months.
The first time was at Sidcor?
The first time was, Brandy took me out to California and we met out there.
Yeah, and the second time we were in Brandy's office and we were near the file cabinets. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah, that was the second time. That
was the second time, right? That was the second. And you were brand new in the business, and I meet Adam at that age and at that new time, and now Adam and I are talking every day on the phone. And so those kind of things just are great. And even if not, some people maybe the last time I see him, and I don't know, I still want to get to know him, Jared, if I can. It's just important. I don't know.
So one of the things, Gary, about you is we were talking about this on a call the other day, actually, my team and I were, about how when someone meets you and they walk away from a conversation, actually it was Sofan and I were talking about this, and I think he made the comment that when you're talking to Gary, you feel like the only person in the room. And I think something that we forget, that the best way to get someone to think you care about them is to care about them.
Right. And that's why the challenge of genuine encounter is so hard. we all have a zillion things to do and a zillion things on our to-do list and other things. And did I forget this? And the challenge is how to put that out of your mind so that when you're with someone, whether at work or your significant other or your child, that's all that's on your mind. Now, I can't say that I'm great at that all the time because sometimes my mind wanders. It's a constant challenge for me. But it's really, how do I get into that if I can? And sometimes I can't. Right now, it's been harder to. I've had a lot on my mind and a lot to do. I just know that when I'm with, it's going to be a lot harder, and other times it's easier.
Next question is from Dana in Kentucky. Dana, you're up.
Okay. Hey, Gary, how are you?
Hey, Dana, how are you?
Good. So my question is, what was the toughest moment in your early business life, like being a young entrepreneur, and how did you bounce back?
Well, the hardest thing when I lost my first business, Dana, it just crushed my confidence. It made me think, well, maybe I'm not meant to be a business person. Because originally when I started in business, even before I started in business, I wasn't sure I could be a businessman because I'm quieter, I'm not confrontational. I had a kind of a speech issue a little bit as a kid. I went to speech therapy. And so I was always self-conscious talking to adults and talking to other people, actually. And then when I was in college, like, I started working for this guy, Howard Levine, who had more of my temperament, and he was very successful. He owned the business, a big mortgage company. And I said, well, Howard has my temperament. So it gave me confidence that I could be a business person. Part of me was thinking maybe I should be a teacher, a high school teacher or something, because I love academics, I love learning. And I always had that kind of two sides of tension of what I wanted. But when I lost my first business, Dana, I was devastated and thinking that I didn't have what it took to be a business person. I was really down on myself. And it took me a couple years, probably 4 or 5 years, to build that confidence back, to start it, at it again. So that was probably my lowest point. Now I had a lot of times I was super scared. But that was, at the early stage, my lowest.
All right, so our next question is from Carrie. Carrie is unmuted.
Hey, Gary. So I have a question. Multiple people have always talked about how humble you are. And so what are some ways that you stay humble when you hit like successful moments in your career, in your life?
It's interesting. I think I think everyone's probably different. For me, humble is easy to be. It's always something really important to me to be. And like I was always the person that I was smart, but I wasn't as smart as the smartest kids. I was decently athletic, but not as athletic as the real athletes. And so I was always like having to do everything just to keep up. I never got to their level academically or in sports, but just to even be able to be in the ballpark with them. So I guess, I had the, fortunate that I wasn't natural in those kind of things in an elite way. And I had to work really hard to keep up, and maybe that, but it's also what's important is more who the person I am and how my family life is and my ability to how I treat people. And you always got to watch that. This is not like you never ever succeed in that. It's an everyday thing. Those are the most important. And look, and for me, I had more opportunity advantages than almost 99% of the people, just because of the family I grew up with. It's just random. Most people that had what I had, and my parents who they were, and my mom great at building my confidence, and my dad a great example, my grandpa Meyer and my uncle Steve and all that, they would have been successful most likely too. I mean, there's a big part of that. Obviously I had some to play in that, but I don't know, all that, Carrie, just keeps me humble. And the other thing too is, like, we're all just people and we're all going to die one day. And, so you can't get too cocky. We're all just kind of the same, and just try to do our job, whatever we're supposed to be here for.
Khalid from Kentucky has a great question.
Cool. Hey, Gary.
Hi, Khalid.
So you've talked about how you lost points. So what advice do you have for us on this call when or if we ever lose our confidence?
Yeah. When I was younger, I didn't understand it as much as I do now. What I understand now, Khalid, is that confidence is about my ability to work hard at something. That's about it. There's no, if I want to be good at something, if I want to put in the effort, I'll be good at it. I mean, that's really what it's about. It's the effort I put in. And if I'm not getting the results, I just got to put in more effort. I got to learn more. I got to have more student mentality. I got to find a way to figure it out, but it's all in my effort. Whereas before, when I was your age and young, in my 20s and 30s, especially, I kept thinking, especially up until my mid 30s, I kept thinking that I'm confident or not, do I have the natural ability to be a good business person? It was like am I born to do it or not? And so if I wasn't doing well, I lost my confidence. I go, I'm not born for this. And if I was doing well, I'm thinking maybe I am born for this. What I had to think back has nothing to do with that. It's, am I willing to put in the work? I mean, how hard? Now, sometimes we're gonna have to work super hard. So even going like through now the tough times that everyone's going through, and I know for our business, it's very difficult. But I'm totally confident. Why? Because I did all the preparation and work with our team. And we had a lot of smart people looking at this. We worked really, really hard, a tremendous amount of hours of all of us. We got a great plan. We vetted out with experts. I'm totally confident. Not because I'm natural at this. I'm not born knowing how to get through a coronavirus. I just put in all the planning and everything I was trained to do all these years. So that's kind of how I look at it.
Our next question is from Rachel Lassiter.
Hi, Gary.
Hey, Rachel.
And good to hear from you. So my question, you talk a lot about how the most important thing to you is family and family life. So what advice would you give to somebody whose family really isn't on board with this and like can't see the big picture? Or in other words, how do you suggest or maybe coach or lead up when it comes to family? And these are people you really care about and you want to make it work, but not really sure if they're understanding or agreeing.
Yeah, that's tricky a little bit. I mean, when I was an accountant, I worked for Price Waterhouse, and you had to work 2 years to get your CPA certificate. And I passed the exam, which is really hard to do. But I needed 2 years of audit at the time. That's how they did it. And after a year, I quit the company. Or I wanted to quit to start a business. And I was telling my dad about it. My dad goes, wait, whoa. Wait 1 more year. The business will still be there. And then you'll have your CPA certificate to fall back on. And so I thought about it for a second. That's kind of logical. And then I said, if I have something to fall back on, I'll never be both feet in what I'm doing. I got to burn the boats and back of me. I'm going for it. I remember it just hit me like that. And my dad tried to persuade me against it. My dad, turned out to be very successful, but I kind of needed to do what I needed to do. And then later when I was a lawyer, I had a really good job, paid a lot of money. And now I'm going into commercial printing. And he goes, what? First of all, you're colorblind. Like, why would you go into something like that? You can't even, the least mechanical person I know, you're going to be the most educated printer in the country. What the hell are you thinking? You got a kid and you finally got itself where you could where you don't have to live with us all the time. Why would you leave? That's what he said. But I had to do what I had to do. So I think there's a little bit of, you got to kind of do what you got to do. And my dad meant well, and maybe his advice was right or wrong. I don't know, because parents are protective and conservative. We have a business that has, people doing entry-level sales. It's commission-based. A lot of parents are going, what are you, like, why would you do that? And so, and I think if when I talk to parents about it, some of my kids' friends and stuff that would do the business, I would say, look, this is the best experience your kid's going to get. It's going to put hair on their chest, so to speak, because what they're going to do, if they do this for a couple of years, they are going to learn a work ethic, a grit, a tenaciousness, a resourcefulness that will, whatever they do after will be great. This is what they're going to do every day. This amount of cold calling. They're going to have to get the confidence to take that kind of rejection and have a great attitude about it, regardless of the outcome. And they're going to learn people skills and sales skills. And then after a year or two, then they'll decide if this is what they want to do. It's just getting their, it's great training for them and given the toughness they need for the real world. Great transition experience. And then if they really like it, they can continue on. If not, it's great for the resume and great experience. And that's how I explain it, Rachel. So
I've got a question from our YouTube viewer who asked, how did you get your start with Sidcore? What drew you to it? And what made you want to do that?
So, in essence, I was on the friends and family plan, so to speak. My college roommate and my brother-in-law were shareholders and investors in the business. And my college roommate was a investor in my other business, commercial printing business. And at the time, they wanted me to get involved as the business was, more of the newer size, newer business and the normal growing pains the business had. They thought it'd be really fun to get me involved and maybe have me run the business, so to speak. So that happened back then. At the time, I wasn't really thinking I'd get back into business. I was thinking, I wasn't sure if I wanted to be like a professor or wanted to teach high school, like basketball coach or an English teacher, history teacher. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, but I love the business I'm in because a lot of factors, but it's just working with a lot of young people and helping them with their entrepreneurial spirit and developing them. And it kind of is a blend between being in business and kind of being a teacher. And it just fit me real well.
Excellent. Scott Steuben, I'm going to unmute Scott here, has a great question. Scott, it is all you.
Cool. First off, how you doing, Gary? I'm coming out of Abby Lewis's office. The one thing I find is a lot of people get caught up in comparison. A lot of people talk about the comparison is like the root of all evil. So can you talk about like your thoughts on comparison and also if you think there's a healthy form of comparison?
Yeah, Scott, that's a great question, a really good question. And it, off and on, like my dad kind of told me, never compare yourself to, there's always going to be people that are more successful. There's always going to be people that have more hair on their head or whatever it is. And don't get worried about that. And the 10th commandment is thou shalt not envy. So, I learned that as a kid, but once in a while, like I had a tendency to see what I was weakest at, someone else could be strongest at. And I'd compare myself to and go, God, I can never do well. Now, I never compared what I was great at and they were weak at. I always look at what I was, and so it hurt my confidence at times. And then, but at the end of the day, so, at the end of the day, when I started doing that, I'd have to remind me, don't do that. It's not about a comparison. I'm not here to show people. My grandfather, not grandpa, my other grandfather, before he passed away, told me, I care too much what people think and I'll have a miserable life because of it. You just got to please yourself and God, that's it. That's just what he said. And he was worried, and I was 18 at the time. And so it kind of hit me hard about that. Like that was the last thing basically of my conversation with him. And so I have to watch that. Now, is comparison healthy at times? Well, there's standards of performance that, yeah, I'd love to see if I could do this. But at the end of the day, I kind of stay away from it even with that. I'm going to try to guess of what I could do. And I just want to compete with you. I want to be the best version of myself I could be. So thanks for the question, Scott. That was really helpful.
All right. I think we have time for one, maybe two more questions. Joey, you're up.
Awesome. Thank you, Gary, for your time today. So I have a really quick question, kind of going over just like the current state that we're in now. With this added quote unquote downtime that we have right now, how are you keeping yourself? You know, you mentioned it's a daily battle for you to be buckled down and, you know, focused on tasks sometimes. So with this downtime and with all these outside distractions, how are you really, you know, buckling down and finding a way to just take the time out of your day to get what you need to get done?
So for me, Joey, it's a little easier because I had an overwhelming amount of things to do in a short period of time. So it was easy at the very beginning from like the last week of February till about a week ago. So from the last week of February to about a week, I was in every waking hour working mode. And I had so much to do. I did my plan, I just attacked. And then I would try to spend maybe 20 minutes a day reading. And I'm reading actually a book on Winston Churchill, which is taking me forever to get through. But that was giving me a kind of like a different way. And so I was doing that. Then it was easy for me to focus. It was only until the last week when I have a little more, I don't have to work every waking hour. I lost that adrenaline rush. And then I got to like buckle down and I got to start focusing on working out, which I stopped doing pretty much. And now it's a little harder. And so what I do is stick to the routine of when I get up, do my stretches, then I do my meditation with Headspace, and then I do my plan of the day, and then I work the beginning part of my plan. When that's done, I have breakfast at a certain 9:30, because that way, hopefully the first 3 hours of the day, I got a lot of my work done. Then I'll have, and then I'll just have my routine. And then I wanted to take a walk at 3:30 or so for an hour. And I just kind of stick to a routine. I'm just going to write my routine and stick to it.
Yeah, I love that because we've talked a lot in the last couple of episodes of Lockdown Learning that we've done and a lot of the interviews we've done. That has been a consistent message, no matter the industry of the person that we're talking to. Consistency of routine and daily discipline is huge. So we're nearing the end of our time here, Gary. I was hoping you could leave us with a few parting words. We got about, I think, let's see here. We've got somewhere in the neighborhood of 300 people online on the Zoom, plus we've got some people watching and commenting on YouTube. So what final words do you have for us?
Okay, one of the things, and I have this on my Instagram when I made this, so it's a little repetitive, but one of the big aha moments I had that just clarified everything to me is when my oldest granddaughter was first learning to walk. And she'd be walking and then she'd fall. And then she'd be walking and then she'd fall. And one day I was babysitting her for about an hour and we're in the playroom in my man cave. And I was chasing her because she was getting pretty good at it and she'd like to run away. And she kept falling on the carpet. I didn't count how many times, 50, 75, 100, 150 times. She kept falling. Once in a while, she'd be crying because she took a bad fall. But she kept getting up. And what that just hit me is that's who we are as humans. We're born with an incredible ability to struggle. I don't know how many times a kid falls before they learn how to walk without falling. Thousands and thousands, tens of thousands probably, if you counted. That is who we are. That's in our DNA, to struggle. And somehow as we get older, struggling becomes a bad thing. We get down on ourselves for struggling. No, our struggling is our greatness. Struggling is how we learn and grow. If you don't fall, what else happens? You don't walk. So my thing is, believe in yourself. Believe in our power to struggle. Hey, it may be harder for others. It may take me longer to do things, but I know if I stay at it, I could do whatever I want. I put my mind to it. It may take me a little longer. There may be speed bumps along the way, like the virus right now, but stay to it. Like we have that strength within us, and that's what I'd kind of leave everyone with.
All right, well, Gary, thank you so much for the time today. We have a little tradition on these calls at the end. Unmute everybody so we can thank Gary for his time. So thanks, guys. Let's go run.
Hey.
Thank you, Gary.
Thank you.
Hey, Gary, man.
Yes.
Pleasure.
Gary.